I found out my mother had secretly sold the house my father left me while I was standing at his funeral, and she smiled in front of everyone and said, "You don't live there anymore." I thought she was joking until a stranger walked up beside her holding a folder and said, "I'm the new owner." My entire family stared at me while my older sister folded her arms and said, "Dad wanted the house to stay with the people who actually loved him." I couldn't believe what I was hearing because my father had promised me that house since I was 16, and he repeated it again just days before he died. I asked my mother how she could sell something that wasn't hers, but she laughed and pulled out what looked like a deed with her name on it. "Your father changed everything before he died," she said. My uncle nodded and told me to stop embarrassing myself because the paperwork was already finished, and even my cousins told me to leave because I was making the funeral about money. I almost walked away until I remembered my father's final voicemail that I had never listened to because it hurt too much after he died. Right there outside the church I pressed play, and his voice said, "If your mother ever tells you the house isn't yours, call my lawyer immediately because something has gone very wrong." My heart started racing, and before I could even make the call, a black car pulled into the parking lot. My father's lawyer stepped out holding a thick file and asked, "Has anyone signed anything today?" My mother immediately interrupted him and said everything had already been settled, but he ignored her and asked to see the deed she was waving around. The moment he looked at it, he smiled. "That's interesting," he said. My mother suddenly looked nervous. He held the paper up for everyone to see and calmly explained that my father's signature had been copied from another document because he personally witnessed every legal document my father signed during the last 10 years, and this wasn't one of them. My mother started shouting that he was lying, but then the lawyer opened his file and pulled out the real deed, the original will, and a notarized letter from my father. He read the letter out loud, and it said, "If my wife ever claims this house belongs to her, she forged my signature because I made this property impossible to sell without my son's written approval." The entire crowd went silent. My sister grabbed the fake deed from my mother's hand and realized her own signature was on it as a witness. She turned pale because she had no idea she had helped commit fraud. Then the lawyer revealed another surprise. The so-called buyer wasn't actually the owner because the sale had never been legally completed. He was working with the police as part of an investigation after the land registry flagged suspicious paperwork. Two detectives walked into the church parking lot and asked my mother if she wanted to explain why she had forged legal documents and accepted a payment for property she didn't own. My uncle quietly tried to leave, but one detective stopped him because the money from the fake sale had already been transferred into his bank account. My mother burst into tears and begged me to tell them it was all a misunderstanding, but the lawyer handed the detectives one final envelope from my father. Inside was another letter that read, "Son, if you're reading this, then I was right to protect you because the people closest to you cared more about my house than about my life. Never let guilt convince you to reward betrayal." My mother looked at me and whispered, "I'm still your mother." I looked back at her and said, "A real mother doesn't steal from her own son while she's burying his father." The detectives placed my mother and uncle in handcuffs. The fake buyer testified against them. My sister apologized for believing the lies, and a month later I unlocked the front door of the house my father had protected for me, realizing that his final gift wasn't the property itself but the proof that he had seen the betrayal coming long before anyone else did.